Welcome to Life Stories, where we bring you inspiring tales of resilience, transformation, and the enduring power of hope. Today's story takes us into the life of Emily, a young woman whose quiet strength and unwavering dignity challenge a culture of arrogance and inequity. Through determination and kindness, she turns adversity into opportunity, proving that even in the face of overwhelming odds, one person can ignite change. Don't miss this captivating journey filled with profound lessons about empathy, courage, and self-worth. Subscribe to Life Stories now and join us as we explore the story of Emily and the power of perseverance. Let's dive into today's story. Winter had come harshly to New York City. The streets were cloaked in a damp grayness, a mix of snow and fog that made the tall buildings seem even more imposing. The city's pulse was relentless, with hurried steps and bustling voices filling the air. Yet, for Emily Carter, it was just another day. At 26, she was no stranger to the weight of responsibility. Each morning, she braved the bitter cold, her boots crunching against the icy pavement as she hurried to Coleman Financial Group, the prestigious investment firm where she had worked for the past 3 years. Emily's life was a quiet battle against the odds. At work, she was a diligent secretary, overlooked and often undervalued. At home, she was a devoted daughter, caring for her ailing mother, Margaret. Their small apartment in Brooklyn was modest but warm, filled with the remnants of a life built on resilience and love. Margaret had been Emily's rock during her childhood. But now, with her health declining due to a chronic illness, the roles had reversed. Emily took on the burdens of provider and caretaker, balancing her mother's medical needs with the relentless demands of her job. That morning began like many others, with Emily meticulously organizing the documents she was tasked with managing. The office atmosphere mirrored the weather outside: cold, clinical, and indifferent. The towering walls of Coleman Financial Group seemed designed to reflect the company's hierarchical nature. The power dynamics were clear, and those at the top rarely interacted with the workers below them unless it was to issue orders or critique performance. Emily, perched at her desk in the corner of the vast floor, was one of many whose presence went unnoticed. As she worked, she overheard snippets of conversations around her, talks of weekend getaways, expensive restaurants, and luxury cars. The lives of her colleagues felt worlds away from her reality. Emily had learned to tune out such chatter, knowing it served as a painful reminder of the gap between her modest life and the privilege surrounding her. Yet, her resolve never wavered. Every day, she gave her best, motivated not by recognition but by the necessity of her circumstances. Her boss, Richard Coleman, was the epitome of corporate arrogance. In his late 50s, Richard exuded authority, his tailored suits and sharp gaze signaling a man who had mastered the art of command. To his superiors, he was a visionary leader. To his subordinates, he was a figure of fear, a man whose disdain for those beneath him was palpable. For Emily, Richard was a daily reminder of how undervalued she was. No matter how diligently she worked, her efforts were met with indifference or, worse, veiled contempt. Emily, Richard's voice cut through the hum of the office like a blade. She turned quickly, her hands instinctively reaching for her notepad. He stood a few feet away, barely glancing at her. "I need the projections report for this quarter finalized and on my desk within the hour. No mistakes." "Yes, Mr. Coleman," she replied, her voice steady despite the tension his presence evoked. He didn't wait for a response, walking away as if she were an automated machine. Emily sighed inwardly and turned back to her computer, fingers flying over the keyboard. There was no room for error in Richard's world. Yet there was no acknowledgement of excellence either. Hours passed, and Emily barely noticed the time. The work demanded her full attention, and she was determined not to falter. Yet, beneath her focus lay a simmering frustration. How long could she endure being treated as if her efforts were meaningless? She thought about her mother and how Margaret always encouraged her to persevere. "Don't let the world harden you, Emily," her mother would say with a gentle smile. "You're stronger than you think." That night, as Emily returned home, her mother was waiting for her with a cup of hot tea and a warm embrace. Despite her illness, Margaret's spirit was unyielding. Her presence was Emily's refuge, the one place where she felt truly valued. They spent the evening sharing stories and laughter, a brief reprieve from the struggles of the day. But as Emily lay in bed, staring at the cracked ceiling of their apartment, her thoughts drifted to the gnawing question: was this all her life would ever be? The following morning, something unusual happened. Among the stack of documents on her desk was an ivory-colored envelope, its surface embossed with gold. Her name, Emily Carter, was etched in cursive on the front. Confused, she opened it and found an invitation to the company's annual year-end party, to be held at the Metropolitan Grand Ballroom, one of the city's most extravagant venues. For a moment, Emily felt a flicker of excitement, but it was quickly replaced by doubt. Employees like her were never invited to events like these. Such occasions were for executives, partners, and those who thrived in the upper echelons of the corporate world. The thought of mingling with them, standing in a room filled with tailored suits and glittering gowns, felt surreal. She turned the card over in her hands, her heart sinking as suspicion crept in. Richard's signature was scrawled at the bottom of the card. Why had he invited her? Emily couldn't shake the feeling that this was more than a mere act of inclusion. She had seen the way Richard wielded his power, how he used situations to belittle and assert dominance. The invitation didn't feel like a gesture of goodwill. It felt like a trap. Still, something stirred within her. Refusing the invitation would confirm Richard's assumption that she didn't belong. But attending meant stepping into an environment designed to make her feel out of place. It was a test of her resilience. And Emily decided she wouldn't give Richard the satisfaction of seeing her falter. That evening, Emily confided in Megan Harper, her closest friend at work. Megan, always quick with a kind word and a dose of humor, listened intently as Emily voiced her concerns. "Emily, you have every right to be there," Megan said firmly. "Don't let Richard or anyone else make you feel less than you are. You're stronger than this." Her words gave Emily the courage she needed. Together, they made plans for Emily to attend the party not as a passive participant, but as someone who could hold her own. For the first time in a long while, Emily felt a spark of defiance, a resolve to reclaim her dignity in a world that often tried to strip it away. As the week passed, the looming company party became an ever-present thought in Emily's mind. She tried to focus on her work, but the idea of walking into the Metropolitan Grand Ballroom, surrounded by people who viewed her as little more than a secretary, filled her with unease. Richard's cold smirk haunted her imagination, and she couldn't shake the feeling that this invitation wasn't just an oversight, it was deliberate. Despite her nerves, Emily was determined to face the night head-on. Megan, her steadfast ally, took it upon herself to ensure that Emily was both mentally and physically prepared for the event. "First things first," Megan said one afternoon as they sat in the break room. "We need to find you a dress. Something elegant but not over the top." Emily hesitated. "I can't spend a fortune on a dress, Megan. You know how tight things are right now. Don't worry about that." Megan replied with a grin. "I know a place. Leave it to me." That evening, Megan took Emily to a small boutique tucked away in a quiet part of the city. The shop was unassuming, but the moment they stepped inside, Emily was struck by the beautiful array of dresses, each one simple yet stunning. Megan led her through the racks, pulling out options and holding them up against her. After much deliberation, they settled on a midnight blue gown. The fabric was soft and flowing, with a modest neckline and subtle detailing that caught the light just enough to add a touch of sophistication. When Emily tried it on and looked at herself in the mirror, she barely recognized the woman staring back. Megan's eyes lit up. "Emily, You look incredible. This is perfect. Simple. Elegant. And exactly you. Emily smiled. A mix of gratitude and nervousness. Thank you. Megan. I don't know what I'd do without you. You'd still shine. Megan replied confidently. This dress just gives the world a chance to see what I already know. Over the next few days, Emily prepared for the party with a growing sense of determination. Her mother, ever her anchor, offered words of encouragement as Emily recounted her doubts and fears. Remember, Emily, Margaret said one evening, her voice steady despite her frailty. Your worth isn't determined by anyone in that room. You know who you are, and that's enough. On the evening of the party, Emily stood before the mirror in her small apartment, taking a deep breath as she smoothed the fabric of her dress. Megan had helped her style her hair in soft waves, and a touch of makeup highlighted her natural beauty. For a moment, she felt a flicker of confidence, bolstered by the support of those who believed in her. The taxi ride to the Metropolitan Grand Ballroom felt surreal. As the car approached the venue, the grandeur of the building came into view. Massive chandeliers cast a golden glow over the entrance, and an array of luxury cars lined the curb. Men and women dressed in designer outfits strolled confidently toward the doors, their laughter and conversation filling the air. Emily stepped out of the taxi, clutching her small evening bag tightly. The cold air bit at her skin, but she barely noticed as she made her way inside. The ballroom was even more opulent than she had imagined. Towering ceilings adorned with intricate moldings, golden accents, and cascading crystal chandeliers created a dazzling spectacle. Tables were set with fine china and floral centerpieces, while servers moved gracefully through the room with trays of champagne. As Emily entered, the conversations around her seemed to pause momentarily. She could feel the weight of countless eyes on her, assessing, judging. The hum of whispered comments reached her ears, but she kept her chin high and her stride steady. Richard was among the first to notice her arrival. He approached with his signature smug expression. Dressed impeccably in a tailored black suit. Emily, he greeted, his tone dripping with feigned warmth. I'm so glad you could make it. Quite a step up from your usual surroundings. Isn't it? Emily met his gaze, her voice calm but firm. Thank you for the invitation, Mr. Coleman. It's nice to be part of a team celebration. Richard's smirk faltered slightly. He had expected her to shrink under his condescension, but her composure caught him off guard. He quickly recovered, chuckling softly. Well, enjoy yourself. I'm sure this will be memorable for you. As he walked away, Emily allowed herself a small, satisfied smile. She had met his attempt to belittle her with grace, refusing to let him dictate how she felt about herself. The evening continued, with Emily navigating the room as best she could. She was careful to stay on the periphery, avoiding unnecessary attention. Yet, despite her efforts, she couldn't escape the lingering stares and murmurs of the other guests. What she didn't realize was that amidst the judgmental gazes, a few individuals were taking note of her quiet strength. James Carter, a senior executive known for his integrity, watched her with interest. Unlike many of his colleagues, James valued hard work and character over appearances. As he observed Emily's calm demeanor and refusal to cower under pressure, he felt a growing sense of respect for her. Later in the evening, as Richard prepared to give a toast, James saw his chance. Standing tall and commanding the room's attention, James interrupted the flow of the event with a clear and steady voice. Before we continue, he began, I'd like to acknowledge someone who truly embodies the values of hard work and dedication. All eyes turned to him, including Emily's, her heart pounding as she realized he was looking directly at her. Emily felt her breath catch as James Carter's words echoed through the room. The soft clinking of glasses and quiet murmurs faded into silence as every head turned toward her. She stood frozen, her mind racing. Why was he speaking about her? What was he going to say? James continued, his voice calm yet commanding. Too often, we overlook the efforts of those who work tirelessly behind the scenes to keep this company running smoothly. Tonight, I want to take a moment to recognize one such individual. The crowd shifted, curiosity painting their faces. Richard, standing near the front, stiffened, his smug demeanor replaced by an expression of growing unease. Emily Parker, James said, his gaze unwavering as it met hers. Your dedication, professionalism, and quiet resilience have not gone unnoticed. You are a vital part of this company's success, and I believe everyone here should know that. A ripple of surprise coursed through the crowd. Emily felt the heat rise to her cheeks, her heart pounding so loudly she was sure everyone could hear it. She wasn't used to this kind of attention, certainly not in this room filled with people who had rarely acknowledged her existence. For a moment, no one spoke. Then, slowly, the sound of applause began to fill the air. It started with Megan, who clapped enthusiastically from her spot near the back. Her face lit up with pride. Others joined in, some hesitantly, others more boldly, until the room was alive with the sound of clapping. Emily, still rooted to her spot, felt an overwhelming mix of emotions: gratitude, pride, and yes, disbelief. She met James's gaze, his warm smile encouraging her to step forward. As she moved through the crowd, she could feel the tension shift. The disdain she had sensed earlier seemed to give way to a begrudging respect. Some of the guests even offered her small smiles as she passed, though others still watched her with skepticism. When she reached James, he extended his hand to her. "Emily," he said, his voice low and kind, "you deserve this recognition. Don't let anyone convince you otherwise." "Thank you," she managed to reply, her voice trembling slightly. I don't know what to say." "You don't need to say anything," he said with a reassuring smile. "Just know that you've earned this." Before Emily could respond, Richard's sharp voice cut through the moment. "James," he said, stepping forward, his expression carefully composed but his tone laced with irritation. "I think we can all agree that Emily does her job well. But tonight is about celebrating the company's leadership and success. Let's not lose sight of that." The room grew quiet again, the applause fading into an uneasy silence. Emily felt the weight of Richard's words, his attempt to diminish her achievement blatant and cruel. She clenched her fists, preparing herself for whatever came next. But James wasn't deterred. "And what is leadership, Richard? If not recognizing the efforts of those who make our success possible," he countered, his tone firm but measured. "Emily embodies the kind of work ethic and integrity that should be celebrated, especially in an environment like this." Richard's jaw tightened, and for a moment, it seemed like he might argue further. But the murmurs of agreement from others in the room gave him pause. He forced a smile, though it didn't reach his eyes. "Of course," he said, his voice smooth but insincere. "You're absolutely right, Emily. Well done." Emily forced herself to nod in acknowledgement, though she couldn't bring herself to thank him. She turned her attention back to James, whose calm confidence helped steady her nerves. The rest of the evening passed in a blur. Guests approached her sporadically, some offering genuine congratulations, others simply curious about the unexpected turn of events. Megan found her later, beaming with pride. "You were amazing," she said, pulling Emily into a quick hug. "I knew you'd show them." "James is the amazing one," Emily replied, still slightly dazed. "I don't know why he stood up for me like that." "Because he sees what I see," Megan said firmly. "And now, so does everyone else." As the night wound down, Emily found herself standing alone near one of the grand windows, staring out at the glittering city lights. The weight of the evening pressed against her chest, a mix of exhaustion and the faintest glimmer of hope. She heard footsteps behind her and turned to see James approaching, a glass of champagne in hand. "You did well tonight," he said, offering her the glass. "You handled everything with grace." "Thank you," she said, taking the glass but not drinking. I'm not sure I'll ever get used to this kind of attention. You don't have to, he said with a smile. You just have to keep being yourself. That's what matters. Emily studied him for a moment, searching for the right words. James, why did you do it? Why stand up for me like that? He took a sip of his champagne, his expression thoughtful. Because it was the right thing to do. People like Richard think power comes from stepping on others. But real strength comes from lifting others up. He paused, meeting her gaze. And because you remind me of someone I used to know. Someone who deserved a lot more than they ever got. Emily felt a lump form in her throat but nodded, grateful for his honesty. Thank you, she said again, her voice soft but sincere. As the party came to an end and guests began to leave, Emily walked out of the ballroom feeling a sense of resolve. She wasn't sure what the future held. But for the first time in a long time, she felt like she belonged, not because of what others thought of her, but because she had decided to own her place in the world. The days following the company party felt like an emotional whirlwind for Emily. She couldn't escape the memory of the applause, the looks of respect from her colleagues, and James Carter's words of encouragement. For years, she had been invisible in the office, a cog in the wheel that turned unnoticed. But now, something had shifted. The world seemed to have seen her for the first time. Despite the momentary high of recognition, returning to work wasn't without its challenges. The atmosphere in the office remained charged, though in ways Emily hadn't expected. Some colleagues approached her with warm smiles, congratulating her on the recognition she had received. Megan, as always, was a steadfast source of positivity, whispering encouraging words whenever they passed each other. Others, however, weren't as welcoming. Emily noticed the glances exchanged in hushed corners, the murmurs that quickly faded when she entered a room. Some of her colleagues, especially those closer to Richard's inner circle, seemed more distant, their smiles forced or absent altogether. She couldn't tell if it was envy, resentment, or something more subtle, but it was clear that not everyone was pleased by the change in her status. Richard's reaction was the most telling of all. Since the night of the party, he had avoided direct contact with her, delegating tasks through intermediaries or curt emails. When they did cross paths, his greetings were clipped, his gaze cold. Emily knew he hadn't forgiven her, not for anything she had done, but for the fact that someone else had highlighted her value, undermining his carefully curated narrative of control. But James's words echoed in her mind whenever doubt threatened to creep in. Real strength comes from lifting others up. That simple truth became a guiding principle for her. A reminder that she didn't need to measure her worth by Richard's approval or the opinions of those who chose to judge her. One morning, a week after the party, Emily received an email from James inviting her to his office. The subject line was simple: "Let's talk." As she climbed the stairs to the executive floor, her heart raced with nervous anticipation. What could he possibly want to discuss? James's office was a stark contrast to the cold, impersonal spaces she had grown accustomed to in the company. The warm lighting, bookshelves lined with worn novels, and a small collection of personal mementos gave the room a welcoming, human touch. James greeted her with his characteristic calm, gesturing for her to take a seat across from him. "I wanted to check in," he began, his tone sincere. "After everything that happened at the party, I imagine things might feel different around here for you." Emily hesitated before answering, unsure how much to share. "It's been an adjustment," she admitted. "I'm grateful for the recognition. But not everyone sees it that way." James nodded knowingly. Change is never easy, especially in a place like this. People don't like it when the status quo is disrupted. But I wanted you to know that what happened that night wasn't just a moment. It was the beginning of something bigger. She tilted her head, curiosity flickering in her eyes. "What do you mean?" James leaned forward, resting his elbows on his desk. "Emily, this company is on the verge of transformation. For too long, It's been led by people like Richard, people who see their employees as tools rather than individuals with value. I've been pushing for change. But it's not something I can do alone. That's where you come in. Me? Emily asked. Startled. I'm just a secretary. Not anymore, James said firmly. You've shown strength, resilience, and integrity in ways that most people never do. That's exactly what this company needs in its leadership. Emily's heart pounded. Leadership. The word felt almost foreign to her. A distant ideal she had never considered for herself. I don't know if I'm ready for something like that, she said. Her voice barely above a whisper. None of us are ever truly ready, James replied with a faint smile. But the best leaders are the ones who never lose sight of what it means to be in someone else's shoes. You've lived that reality, and it's given you a perspective that most of us up here lack. Emily sat back, her mind reeling. She had spent so long trying to blend into the background, to survive unnoticed. Now, James was offering her the chance to step into the spotlight, to take a role she had never dreamed of. I'm not asking for an answer today, James continued. But I want you to think about it. This company is changing, Emily. And I believe you're exactly the kind of person we need to make sure it changes for the better. She left his office feeling a strange mix of exhilaration and apprehension. The idea of taking on a leadership role was both thrilling and terrifying. Could she really step into that space? Would her colleagues ever see her as more than just a secretary? As the days passed, Emily found herself reflecting on her journey, on the challenges she had faced, the sacrifices she had made, and the values that had kept her going. She thought of her mother's words of encouragement, of Megan's unwavering support, and of the promise she had made to herself to never let anyone define her worth. By the end of the week, Emily had made her decision. She sent James an email with a single sentence: "Let's do this." Stepping into her new role was like stepping into uncharted territory for Emily. The announcement of her promotion was met with mixed reactions across the company. Some employees were genuinely happy for her, seeing it as a sign of hope that hard work and integrity could indeed be recognized. Others, especially those who had grown comfortable with the old power dynamics, greeted the news with skepticism or thinly veiled hostility. On her first day in the new role, Emily found herself seated at the head of a conference table, a position she had never imagined occupying. Around her sat department heads, executives, and team leads, all individuals who had once been above her in the corporate hierarchy. Now, they were her peers, and in some cases, her subordinates. The weight of their expectant gazes was palpable. But Emily drew strength from the lessons she had learned along the way. "Thank you all for being here," she began, her voice steady despite the nervous flutter in her chest. "I know this is a time of change for everyone, and I want to assure you that my goal is not to disrupt, but to build. This company has incredible potential, and together, I believe we can create an environment where every employee feels valued." Her words were met with polite nods and a smattering of applause. She could sense the hesitation in the room, the unspoken doubts about whether she was truly capable of leading. But Emily didn't let that deter her. She knew that earning their respect would take time, and she was prepared to prove herself through action, not just words. Her first major challenge came almost immediately. One of the company's key projects was behind schedule, and tensions were running high among the team responsible. Emily decided to visit the department herself, a move that surprised many of her colleagues who were accustomed to executives delegating such matters. When she arrived at the project office, she found the team huddled around a table strewn with blueprints, charts, and half-empty coffee cups. The atmosphere was tense, and it was clear that frustration had been building for weeks. "Good morning," Emily said, stepping into the room. The team looked up, startled by her presence. "I understand there have been some challenges with this project. I'd like to hear your thoughts on what's been holding things up." For a moment, there was silence. Then, a young project manager named Jason hesitantly spoke up. The timeline we were given was unrealistic from the start, he admitted. We've been working overtime just to try to keep up. But it's taking a toll on the team. Emily nodded thoughtfully. Thank you for sharing that. Jason. I can see how hard all of you have been working. And I appreciate your dedication. Let's take a step back and reevaluate the timeline. I'd rather see this project done right than rushed and full of compromises. Her willingness to listen and adjust expectations won over the team. Over the next few weeks, Emily worked closely with them, providing the resources and support they needed to get back on track. By the time the project was completed, it was not only on schedule but exceeded the original quality expectations. The team's success became a symbol of what could be achieved under her leadership. As word of her hands-on approach spread, attitudes toward Emily began to shift. Employees who had once viewed her with skepticism started to see her as a leader who genuinely cared about their well-being. She made it a point to visit different departments regularly, taking the time to listen to employees at all levels and understand their challenges. One afternoon, Emily stopped by the call center, a department that often went unnoticed despite its critical role in customer relations. She spent an hour sitting with the agents, listening to their calls and asking about their experiences. When one of the agents mentioned that their outdated software was causing delays, Emily immediately escalated the issue to the IT department, ensuring that a new system was implemented within weeks. For Emily, these small gestures were not just about improving efficiency, they were about building trust and showing that every employee's voice mattered. The call center agents, who had previously felt invisible, began to take pride in their work, knowing that their contributions were recognized. Not everyone welcomed the changes Emily was bringing. A few senior executives who had been close allies of Richard began to push back, questioning her decisions in meetings and attempting to undermine her authority. One such executive, Mark, confronted her after a leadership meeting. "You're making a lot of changes, Emily," he said, his tone dripping with condescension. "But don't you think you're moving a little too fast? This company has been successful for years. Maybe it doesn't need fixing." Emily met his gaze, her expression calm but resolute. "Mark, success is not just about profits. It's about creating a workplace where people feel valued and motivated. If we want to stay successful, we need to adapt and grow. That's what I'm here to do." Her response left him momentarily speechless. And though she knew she hadn't won him over, Emily felt a sense of satisfaction. She wasn't afraid to stand her ground, even against those who doubted her. As the weeks turned into months, the changes Emily had implemented began to bear fruit. Employee satisfaction surveys showed significant improvements, and productivity across departments was on the rise. The company's reputation in the industry also began to shift, with clients and competitors alike taking notice of its renewed focus on ethics and employee well-being. One day, as she walked through the office, Emily overheard a conversation between two employees. "It's different around here now," one of them said. "It feels like we actually matter." Hearing those words filled Emily with a sense of pride and purpose. She had taken a risk by stepping into this role, but now she could see the impact of her efforts. For the first time, the company felt like a place where everyone, regardless of their position, could thrive. As the months passed, Emily's leadership began to redefine not just the company's culture but its core identity. Employees from all levels started to experience a shift in how they were treated. A sense of equality and respect that had been absent under Richard's tenure. Yet, Emily remained vigilant, knowing that real change required not just new policies but sustained action and unwavering commitment. One of the company's most ambitious initiatives under Emily's leadership was the development of a mentorship program. This program paired junior employees with experienced mentors who could guide them in their professional growth. Emily herself was deeply involved, not just in overseeing the program but in participating as a mentor. She believed that sharing knowledge and experiences was vital for fostering a culture of collaboration. Her mentee, A young analyst named Chloe reminded Emily of herself in her early days. Chloe was eager to learn but lacked confidence, often hesitating to voice her ideas in meetings. Over weekly sessions, Emily encouraged Chloe to step out of her comfort zone, to trust in her abilities, and to speak her mind. During one such session, Emily asked Chloe about a presentation she had been preparing for the upcoming quarterly review. "How's the presentation coming along?" Emily asked, her tone warm and supportive. Chloe hesitated before responding. "It's okay, I guess. I'm just worried it's not good enough." Emily smiled. "Chloe, the fact that you care so much about getting it right is a good thing. But don't let fear hold you back. The people in that room want to hear what you have to say. Your ideas matter." When the day of the review arrived, Emily sat in the audience, watching as Chloe confidently presented her analysis. Her clear, insightful presentation impressed the executives and earned her a round of applause. Afterward, Chloe sought out Emily, her face glowing with pride. "I couldn't have done it without you," Chloe said. "Yes, you could," Emily replied with a smile. "I just helped you see it." Moments like these reaffirmed Emily's belief in the power of mentorship. She knew that nurturing the next generation of leaders was essential for the company's long-term success. Despite the progress being made, Emily was not without challenges. Some employees still clung to the old ways, resistant to the changes she was implementing. Among them was Mark, who had been a vocal critic of Emily from the start. His subtle attempts to undermine her authority persisted, and Emily knew she had to address the situation directly. One afternoon, she called Mark into her office. As he entered, his demeanor was as guarded as ever. "Mark, I think it's time we have an honest conversation," Emily began. "I've noticed you've been resistant to some of the changes we're making, and I want to understand why." Mark crossed his arms, his expression unreadable. "I just think we're losing sight of what made this company successful in the first place. All these new programs and policies, are they really necessary?" Emily leaned forward, her voice steady. "I understand your concerns, Mark. But success isn't just about numbers on a spreadsheet. It's about people. If we want to build something that lasts, we need to create an environment where our employees feel valued and empowered. That's not a distraction, it's the foundation." Mark was silent for a moment, his defenses beginning to waver. "I'll admit, I didn't think someone in your position could make this kind of impact," he said finally. "But I can see now that you're not just changing policies, you're changing minds." Emily nodded, appreciating his candor. "I'm not here to prove anyone wrong, Mark. I'm here to make this company better. And I need people like you on board to make that happen." Though it wasn't an instant transformation, that conversation marked a turning point in their relationship. Over time, Mark became one of Emily's allies, lending his experience and insight to support her initiatives. As Emily navigated these challenges, she found strength in the community she was building. Employees who had once been strangers now worked together with a shared sense of purpose. Team-building events and open forums became regular occurrences, fostering connections across departments. One particularly memorable event was a company-wide volunteer day. Employees spent the day working with local charities, from serving meals at shelters to organizing donations for underprivileged families. Emily participated alongside her colleagues, rolling up her sleeves and immersing herself in the work. At the end of the day, as the teams gathered to reflect on their experiences, an employee named Marcus stood up to speak. "I've been with this company for 15 years, he said, his voice thick with emotion. "And I've never felt this kind of camaraderie before. For the first time, I feel like I'm part of something bigger than just a job." The applause that followed was heartfelt, and Emily felt a deep sense of fulfillment. This was the culture she had envisioned, a place where people felt connected, respected, and inspired. As the company continued to thrive under Emily's leadership, its reputation began to attract attention beyond the industry. Media outlets praised its innovative approach to leadership and employee engagement. And Emily was invited to speak at conferences and panels about her journey. During one such event, she shared the story of her rise from secretary to CEO. She spoke about the importance of perseverance, empathy, and the courage to challenge the status quo. The most valuable lesson I've learned, Emily concluded, is that leadership isn't about power, it's about service. When we lead with integrity and compassion, we create opportunities for everyone to succeed. Her words resonated with the audience, many of whom approached her afterward to express their admiration and gratitude. By the end of the year, the company had not only achieved its financial goals but had also become a model for ethical and inclusive leadership. Employees were more engaged than ever, and the workplace had transformed into a community where everyone felt they had a voice. For Emily, the journey was far from over. She knew there would always be challenges to face and improvements to make. But as she stood in her office, looking out at the bustling workplace below, she felt a profound sense of accomplishment. The seeds of change she had planted were flourishing, and she knew that the company's future was brighter than ever. More importantly, she had proven to herself and others that integrity and empathy could be the driving forces behind true success. As the company flourished under Emily's leadership, the once distant divisions among employees began to dissolve. People who had rarely spoken before now collaborated, exchanging ideas and building bonds that went beyond work. For Emily, seeing this transformation was one of the greatest rewards of her new role. However, amidst the progress, Emily faced a surprising development. A journalist, intrigued by the dramatic changes in the company, requested an interview. Emily was initially hesitant, she preferred her actions to speak louder than her words. But after discussing it with Andrew and Lily, she agreed. It was an opportunity to share the journey and inspire others in similar positions. The day of the interview, the journalist, a woman named Claire Simmons, arrived at the office. She was a seasoned writer with a knack for uncovering human stories within corporate structures. Emily, Claire began as they sat in the sunlit conference room. Your story is extraordinary. You've gone from being a secretary to leading this company. But I want to know what kept you going when it felt like the odds were against you. Emily took a moment to reflect before answering. For me, it was always about purpose, she said. I grew up understanding that hard work and dignity go hand in hand. My mother instilled that in me. When I started here, I saw so many people working tirelessly without recognition. I knew that had to change. It wasn't just about proving something to myself, it was about creating a culture where everyone could thrive. Claire leaned in, intrigued. And when you faced resistance, how did you handle it? Emily smiled faintly. With patience and persistence. Change is difficult for people. It's unsettling. But I knew that if I stayed consistent in my values, eventually, others would see the benefits. It wasn't about forcing people to change, it was about showing them a better way. The interview lasted an hour, touching on everything from the company's transformation to Emily's personal motivations. By the end, Claire was visibly moved. Your story is one of resilience and empathy, she said. I think it will inspire a lot of people. Emily hoped so. She wasn't looking for accolades. But if sharing her experiences could encourage others to challenge the status quo, it was worth it. The following week, Claire's article was published in a prominent business magazine. Titled Leading with Heart, How Emily Reynolds Transformed a Corporate Giant, the piece chronicled Emily's journey and the cultural overhaul she spearheaded. It included anecdotes from employees, testimonials from Andrew and Lily, and a detailed look at the mentorship and support programs Emily had implemented. The response was overwhelming. Messages flooded in from professionals across industries, praising Emily's leadership style and expressing admiration for her courage. Some even sought her advice on how to replicate her methods in their own organizations. One message, however, stood out. It was from Chloe, Emily's former mentee. Now thriving in her new role, Chloe had written a heartfelt note thanking Emily for believing in her. "You taught me that confidence doesn't come from perfection, it comes from trusting yourself." Chloe wrote, "Because of you, I've learned to embrace challenges instead of fearing them. Thank you for being my guide and my inspiration." Reading Chloe's words, Emily felt a lump in her throat. It was a reminder of why she had taken on this challenge in the first place: to lift others, to give them the opportunities she once wished for. As Emily continued to lead the company, she remained acutely aware of the challenges ahead. Not everyone had embraced the changes, and there were still moments of tension, especially among older executives who were deeply rooted in the company's previous culture. One such figure was Richard's longtime confidant, Victor. Though less overtly confrontational than Richard, Victor harbored skepticism about the new direction. He rarely spoke in meetings and often seemed detached from the enthusiasm that had taken hold in the office. Emily decided to address this head-on. One afternoon, she invited Victor for a private discussion. "Victor," she began, her tone calm but firm, "I value your experience and perspective. But I can't help but notice that you've been distant during our discussions. If there's something on your mind, I'd like to hear it." Victor regarded her for a moment before responding. "I'll be honest, Emily. I've been with this company for decades. I've seen leaders come and go, and I've seen a lot of promises that didn't amount to much. I'm cautious because I don't want to see us lose what made us successful in the first place." Emily nodded, understanding his concerns. "I appreciate your honesty, Victor. And I want you to know my goal isn't to erase the past. It's to build on it. The values you helped establish, hard work, ambition, excellence, are still at the core of what we do. But I believe we can achieve those things without sacrificing our humanity." Victor's expression softened slightly. "I'll admit, I've been skeptical. But I can't ignore the changes I've seen. People seem happier, more engaged." "They are," Emily said with a small smile. "And that's not just good for them, it's good for the company. Engaged employees are more productive, more creative, and more loyal. It's a win-win." Victor leaned back, considering her words. "You're determined. I'll give you that. Maybe it's time I stopped looking at this as a challenge to the old ways and started seeing it as an evolution." Emily extended her hand. "I'd be honored to have your support, Victor." He shook her hand, a hint of respect in his eyes. "Let's see where this takes us." It was a small victory, but one that meant a great deal to Emily. Building bridges with skeptics like Victor was crucial for the long-term success of her vision. As the weeks turned into months, the company's transformation continued to gain momentum. Employees who had once been silent now spoke up in meetings, confident that their ideas would be heard. Teams collaborated more effectively, and the overall morale was higher than ever. For Emily, the most rewarding moments were the quiet ones: watching Chloe lead a meeting with poise, seeing Carlos share a laugh with his colleagues during a team lunch, or hearing about Anna's success in her new role. These moments reminded her that leadership wasn't about making grand gestures or holding a title. It was about creating an environment where people could thrive. And as long as she continued to do that, Emily knew she was on the right path. In the months that followed, Emily's influence continued to ripple through the company. Her vision of inclusivity, empathy, and mutual respect became more than just ideals, they became the foundation upon which the company thrived. One of Emily's most ambitious initiatives was the Future Leaders Program, a mentorship and development scheme aimed at identifying untapped potential among employees across all levels. The program paired senior executives with junior staff, creating opportunities for knowledge sharing and fostering a sense of community within the organization. Chloe, Emily's former mentee, became one of the program's most vocal advocates. She often spoke to participants about how mentorship had transformed her career, instilling confidence and a willingness to take on challenges. "Your background doesn't define your future," Chloe said during a workshop. What matters is finding people who believe in you and believing in yourself enough to seize the opportunities that come your way." Her words resonated with the participants, many of whom had experienced the same feelings of invisibility that Emily once endured. Chloe's success became a beacon for others, proof that growth was possible with the right support and determination. Emily's days were filled with challenges, both expected and unforeseen. Despite the progress, not everyone embraced the changes. A small faction of senior executives resisted the new culture, arguing that the emphasis on inclusivity diluted the company's focus on performance. At one board meeting, Jonathan, a long-serving executive, voiced his concerns. "Emily, while I understand your intentions, I worry that we're prioritizing morale at the expense of results. This company was built on ambition and drive, not hand-holding." Emily listened intently, her demeanor calm but resolute. "Jonathan, I appreciate your perspective, but I disagree. Morale and performance aren't mutually exclusive. In fact, when employees feel valued, they perform better. We've seen that already in increased productivity and collaboration." She gestured toward a chart displaying improved metrics since the cultural overhaul. "These results speak for themselves. We're not just building a stronger company, we're building a sustainable one." Jonathan hesitated, glancing at the data. While he remained skeptical, he couldn't argue with the evidence. Emily's balanced approach, firm yet empathetic, was winning over even her toughest critics. Outside the boardroom, Emily remained deeply connected to the day-to-day experiences of her employees. She made it a point to visit different departments regularly, listening to their challenges and celebrating their achievements. Her presence was a reminder that leadership wasn't about sitting in an office, it was about being present and engaged. One afternoon, during a visit to the operations floor, Emily overheard a conversation that stopped her in her tracks. Two junior employees were discussing a project, their voices tinged with excitement and optimism. "I never thought I'd get the chance to work on something like this," one of them said. "Emily's changes have made such a difference." Emily smiled, her heart swelling with pride. Moments like these reaffirmed her belief in the path she had chosen, even when it wasn't easy. But leadership also came with personal sacrifices. Emily often found herself working late into the night, reviewing proposals, responding to emails, and strategizing for the future. Her dedication sometimes left her feeling isolated, a reality she had come to accept as part of the responsibility she bore. One evening, as she was preparing to leave the office, Andrew stopped by her door. "Emily," he said, his tone gentle, "you've been working tirelessly. I think it's time you took a step back, just for a moment." Emily looked up, surprised. "Andrew, there's so much to do. I can't afford to take a break." "You can't afford not to," he replied firmly. "You've done incredible work. But you need to recharge. The company is thriving because of your leadership. But you won't be able to sustain this pace forever." His words lingered with her as she drove home that night. Andrew was right, she needed to find balance. Not just for her sake but for the company's long-term success. She resolved to delegate more, trusting her team to carry forward the culture they had built together. The next day, Emily began taking steps to create a healthier work-life balance. Not just for herself but for her team. She encouraged employees to set boundaries, offering flexible schedules and mental health resources to ensure everyone could bring their best selves to work. As these changes took root, the company became not just a workplace but a community. Employees supported one another, celebrating successes and navigating challenges together. It was a far cry from the cutthroat environment Emily had once endured, and she couldn't have been prouder. Months later, the company received a prestigious industry award for its innovative leadership and inclusive culture. During the award ceremony, Emily was invited to deliver a speech. As she stood on the stage, looking out at the audience, she felt a wave of gratitude. "This recognition isn't about me," she began, her voice steady but filled with emotion. It's about every person in this company who believed in a better way. It's about the strength we find in unity, the courage to challenge the status quo, and the determination to build a culture where everyone can thrive. I'm honored to accept this on behalf of all of you. The applause was thunderous. And as Emily stepped down from the stage, she was met by Andrew, Lily, Chloe, and countless others who had supported her journey. You did it, Emily, Lily said, her voice filled with pride. No, Emily replied, smiling. We did it. Together. As the evening wound down, Emily took a quiet moment to reflect. The journey had been anything but easy, but every challenge, every sacrifice, had led to this moment. She knew there would always be more work to do, more battles to fight. But for now, she allowed herself to savor the victory. In the end, Emily's story wasn't just about her rise to leadership, it was about the power of resilience, the strength of community, and the belief that even in the most challenging circumstances, change is possible. And as she looked to the future, she knew that the best was yet to come. As the curtains fell on Emily's remarkable journey, her transformation was nothing short of inspiring. What began as a quiet struggle to hold on to her dignity blossomed into a movement that redefined an entire company's culture. Her unwavering belief in empathy and fairness turned a workplace of cold hierarchies into a thriving community of collaboration and mutual respect. Emily's leadership wasn't just about policies or awards, it was a testament to the power of perseverance, humility, and the courage to stand up for what's right. Her story is a reminder that true strength lies in resilience and in the ability to inspire others to believe in themselves. She didn't just find her voice, she amplified the voices of others, proving that even in the most challenging environments, change is always possible. If this story resonated with you, make sure to subscribe to Life Stories for more tales of courage, transformation, and the profound lessons that life has to offer. Each story is a journey that reminds us of the power of hope, love, and determination. Don't miss out on the next chapter of inspiration. Click subscribe now. And let's continue exploring life's incredible stories together.